Our last video of the course here is going to talk about the disposition effect. This is going to now use application of prospect theory. And this is a phenomenon that a lot of traders actually fall into here. Disposition effect is selling our winners too early, where we sell too early and we hold on to our losers too long. What are we doing? This is stocks. So whatever we buy, if it goes up, sell our winners too early, and we hold our loser stocks too long. Okay. How does that fit prospect theory? I've scribbled up the utility function that we've seen before. And remember, over here in the gain domain, remember, our utility function has us experiencing a lot of happiness right away. So if we have a reference point and we buy it at $100, our stock, we feel really good for that first $20. And from 120 all the way to 200, it starts to diminish in value. Our utility diminishes. That's our diminishing value sensitivity. So what we end up doing is, in order to lock in this gain and to lock in the happiness while we still feel it, we tend to sell our winners too early. So we just get out of the position, we keep that happiness, but what we lose out on is this momentum run of the stock continuing to go up. And so we found this in Odin, in Barber. I'll post that as well. But we found this in trading accounts that people really perform poorly due to this disposition effect, where they sell their winners too early. Now, over here, we feel these losses right away, and we say we hold our losing stocks for too long. What happens here? Once again, our diminishing value sensitivity kicks in, and we feel those losses, and then we just get numb. So as it continues to lose more and more money, we go, I give up. I'm going down with the ship anyway. And we hold them for too long instead of cutting our losses and moving on with life. We hold them for too long. So we found this to be pretty robust among all traders across the world. And so what I've been thinking about is, are there different ways to maybe minimize the disposition effect? And we finally got this out. There's a paper, not by me, but a paper that was doing an experimental treatment to see if people would actually minimize the disposition effect by using what is called a trailing loss stop. Trailing loss stops in order to minimize or diminish this disposition effect. So trailing stop loss. So we call this TSL, and I actually wrote a paper on this as well, trying to go back and seeing if trailing stop losses are effective. And we found it to be marginally effective, even if we did not have this disposition effect. So a trailing stop loss, what that would do is let's say, I'm going to use an example. We buy a stock at $100, and we in the United States can place a trailing stop loss as a percentage, and we can use it good till canceled, which, depending on your broker, can go from 60 to 90 days. So I'm going to put a trailing stop loss of 20%. So now that means if I buy that stock at 100 and it immediately goes down to $80, now our trailing stop loss is triggered and I get a market order. So I become the next available price at $80 or around $80 when that trigger happens. So now all of a sudden, instead of holding my loser for too long, it's going to automatically stop me out without any emotion or extra thinking in the process. Now, what ends up happening if the stock goes up? If I start at 100 and it goes up to 150, I'm feeling really good about myself. But instead of selling too early, that trailing stop loss follows me. 20% decrease from 150 would be $120. And my stop loss follows me at 120. If it goes up to 200, now my trailing stop loss follows me at 20%, gives me 160. So in that case, if it falls back below or at 160, I become a market order and it'll get me out at 160. So again, we're riding that momentum. And when that momentum breaks, it'll automatically cut us out at a certain point. So if we do a really tight 5%, it's going to bust me out pretty early. So we realize that we need to give it a little bit of slack. So 20%, we felt like is a pretty decent mechanism for most stocks. But again, it helps eliminate some of this disposition effect. Now, it's not a perfect solution because what we can do here is if we do a trailing stop loss in its vanilla form, it becomes a market order, like I just said. You could do a trailing stop loss limit, which then becomes a limit order. So if in this example, it goes down to 160 and the stock triggers, the stop loss triggers, becomes a limit order, which means it needs to go back above or at 160 in order for that sale to fill. So this tends to be a nice way of getting out of these positions, but it's not perfect. So I'll show you real quick what that looks like because this happened to me on a trading day back in 2008 when I was working at a discount broker. I had 2 calls back to back, and it was from a company called WellCare Health Services. So WellCare Health Services at 4 p.m. closed at about $120 per share. And after 4 o'clock p.m. close, it got raided in the Tampa, Florida headquarters by the FBI. And so when WellCare opened at 9:30 the next morning, the first trade was at about $28. So I got a call and the customer was really upset. And he said, I had a trailing stop loss order for this company at about $100. He said, and you sold me out at about $28. What is going on here? And I looked and I saw, yeah, indeed, he had a trailing stop loss. So it was triggered at 100 and he got a market order because as soon as it hits that trigger point, it becomes a market order, first available price. He was probably right in line at $28. We sold him out. So he got off the phone very unhappy. Very next call, had the same situation where a guy had another trailing stop loss or a stop loss. He had a stop loss limit at about $100. And so he's asking me, hey, I've got the stop loss limit. Why am I not sold out this morning when it's down trading at $28? We had to explain to him, yeah, your stop loss got triggered, but you've got a limit order. So we need to wait for this to go to $100 or more before your order is filled. So firsthand experience, I will never forget that day taking those calls. And so once again, these trailing stop losses will help minimize the disposition effect. And we can see how that affects how prospect theory can explain a lot of this. But then we also realize that it's not a perfect example or a perfect way of eliminating this. We have to trade at our own risk in case the company that we're investing in gets raided overnight. With that, we conclude this course and the section. And thank you very much. If you made it all the way to the end this far, great job. And I'll have some tools here for you to be able to use and get quizzed on just to test how well you've absorbed everything. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And thanks for getting along on this course and hope to see you in another. We'll see you next time.